The first full squad workout of the spring for the Cardinals brings the opportunity to talk about one up-and-coming pitcher. What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you. It is Monday evening, February 17th, 2025. And as I teased off the top, we will be talking about a young pitcher, a pitching prospect today. Michael McGreevy is the name, as he faced a gauntlet of Cardinal veteran bats in his first live pitching / live batting practice chance of the spring. Talk about how McGreevy looked and how he may end up factoring into the Cardinals' plans for the starting rotation this season. It is, of course, the season where runway is supposed to be factored into a lot of the decisions being made. But I think the rotation is another area where people are kind of looking at it and saying, well, did you really leave any room for guys to have some runway? Some of the younger players, some of the less proven players to step into new roles, maybe, at least on paper, is not an obvious fit for matching the description of what the Cardinals are supposed to be doing this season. So I'll talk about how that kind of meshes with the Cardinals' goals and ideals for the season. I also want to spend some time talking about a couple of players who are veterans of this team. I think two of the most core team leaders at this point for the Cardinals, and give you an example of how these two guys just get it. It's the only way I know how to say it, is that they get it and understand what this is all about in the bigger picture of being a professional baseball player and all that entails. So probably a shorter show tonight, hopefully, because it's pushing midnight already on the East Coast, where I am located down in Jupiter, Florida. I've done a lot of talking today between my radio show with KTGR. We launched Sports Hub STL the first day of that YouTube channel and site being live. So this afternoon got on there with Mike Claiborne and Joe Roderick for our Cards Hub 365 show. And you should definitely go and check that out on the Sports Hub STL YouTube channel. Also, earlier in the day, Brooke and Randy got their show going for the first time. A lot of people tuned in for that one. I actually think I'll be on the show on Tuesday. A little tease there for those who may be listening to this podcast in the morning. I think I'll be joining Randy and Brooke around 10:20 Central Time Tuesday morning. So stay tuned for that. If I get bumped for a better guest, I won't be offended, but I do think that's the expectation. So if folks are looking forward to more of the Sports Hub STL content for Tuesday, that's what you can get ready to look forward to. I'll be joining those guys talking about my latest impressions from spring. But for tonight, we'll talk about some of the impressions from Monday. I want to talk about Michael McGreevy first, and then I'll mention a couple of the veterans that, in the way that I would phrase this, is if you've got kids, if you've got young baseball fans in your life, young Cardinals fans, and you wonder, I don't know, I'm disillusioned sometimes by professional athletes, and I just don't know who are the role models that my kids should really be paying attention to. Who can I trust out here? Well, there's a lot of Cardinals you can trust that are really good dudes. I want to highlight a couple of them in particular, though, today, based on something that I saw earlier this afternoon. But let's talk about Michael McGreevy first. His first live pitching practice of the spring, faced live hitters for the first time. He was the third to go out of Matthew Liberatore, Eric Fetty, and McGreevy on the main backfield today at Cardinals camp. A lot of Cardinals team brass on hand to watch the festivities, as several key Cardinal contributors offensively were lined up to face these pitchers. So, again, you can kind of decide how much you want to read into certain things at this point in the spring. When the schedule comes out each day, you can decide, do I want to read into which infielders are grouped together, which outfielders are grouped together, how many reps does Lars Nootbaar take in center field versus left field? The answer to that, by the way, when they were doing defensive drills today, was Newt got some time in center, Victor got some time in center, Siani got some time in center. I didn't think there was a whole heck of a lot to read into that. See more when we get into game action, I think, when it comes to defensive positioning. Nolan Arenado was taking his ground balls at third base like you would expect. Thomas Saggese also spent a good amount of time over there, and it looked like in some videos that I posted on the channel earlier, those two were actually talking hitting to some extent during the defensive drills, and you just could continue to see Nolan Arenado kind of get into his mock batting stance, and was certainly pouring some information into Thomas Saggese. So already I think we're seeing Nolan Arenado, his presence at camp, paying some dividends with some of the younger players. A guy like Thomas Saggese looking to make his way in the league. I mean, it doesn't get much better than being able to glean some wisdom from Nolan Arenado. And that was one of the Sights and Sounds videos that I posted earlier today. Make sure to check all of those out if you're missing, if you're back in Missouri in the snow and the cold and feel like you're missing out on what's going on down here. I'm trying to bring you in as much as I can with those videos. Posted a couple of them today, including the entire live simulated inning from Michael McGreevy that I'm about to talk about. He maybe threw a second one. I don't know. I left after the first one because I needed to beat feet back to get to our location for Sports Hub STL to do Card Sub 365 with Claibs and Joe Roderick. So if McGreevy threw more, there might be another reporter that can tell you about it. But that whole first inning, basically, that he threw facing some of the big-time Cardinal bats is up there on the YouTube channel. He went against Arenado, went against Newpart, went against Brendan Donovan, went against Wilson Contreras. It's interesting. I was mentioning, how much do you want to read into some of this stuff? I would choose to read into the fact that some of these pitchers that they got to look at, in particular, I think for Liberatore and for Michael McGreevy, two guys that maybe their roles are not solidified just yet. Liberatore, I think, ends up in the bullpen in maybe a prominent role as one of the key lefties out of that group. But certainly they want to say, all right, challenge him early in spring. What does it look like? They're still stretching Liberatore out to be a starter. But like I said, I think eventually he ends up back in the pen. But as for McGreevy, he is in a situation coming into this camp where he is basically the number 6, right? Behind Sonny Gray, Eric Fetty, Andre Palante, Miles Michaelis, Steven Matz. Those are your 5. But I can tell you with utmost certainty that I've been covering this Cardinals team since 2016. I've been coming down to spring training 5 or 6, maybe 7 years now. I'd have to go back and think. Probably 6. I cannot remember a spring where the Cardinals, day one of spring training, had the same starting 5 that they had on the opening day roster, because the rotation ends up suffering at least one injury pretty much like clockwork each and every spring. Last spring, it was Sonny Gray. It was short term with the hamstring, and he was able to make it back at some point in April, but it still happened that way. You had to replace him for the first couple of starts. Adam Wainwright, remember, had the weightlifting incident late in the 2023 spring, I believe it was, with the World Baseball Classic, was lifting some weights there and suffered a bit of an injury that put him behind schedule. And, of course, his 23 never really seemed to recover from that. And then you think back even a little bit further, there was a Miles Michaelis year where he has a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then it ends up being a surgical situation later on in the summer. I want to say that was the COVID year, 2020. There was certainly a Carlos Martinez year mixed in there. There was, you could go back, and each and every year, I think maybe one of them you would have said Alex Reyes, although I don't know if that quite counts, whether he was destined for the rotation or not. I'm just telling you, you could go back and look, and it's been a long while. I think since probably 2015, which was the year before I started covering the team, and that was a year where they had just some unbelievable rotation health. When you go back and look at that group of starters that I think a bunch of them ended up logging 30-plus starts. It's just been a rarity in recent years. So as much as it's going to sound kind of like an oxymoron, like Michael McGreevy can't really do anything to earn a spot, but he can also put himself in a really good position to earn a spot. He can max out his potential this spring, make sure he is very much on the radar for if and when that injury should come up to somebody in the starting 5. He's the obvious candidate to fill that spot, which I think he doesn't need to have a spring where he really blows you away. He just has to be steady, middle of the pack, because he's already got the inside track, I think, for that opportunity. The question would be, can he be so above and beyond excellent that he could actually win a job over one of the incumbents? That would be a tough one to imagine. But like I said, I don't think it's a situation that we will necessarily see play out, because there's going to be an injury. We don't know who it's going to be. We don't root for it, certainly, but would it surprise anybody to see it? No. So I don't think it's crazy, even though the Cardinals have talked about runway, get the young guys some runway, and we look at the rotation and say there's no room for that runway for a young player like McGreevy. I'm going to defend the organization with this one and say there probably is, because, again, 8-9 years in a row, there's been the injury that provides the opportunity. And we should not have to look very far last season when it comes to, even on the offensive side of things, as I continue to kind of toot the horn of, remember, Alec Burleson didn't really have a spot until he did. Things tend to happen, but certainly they tend to happen on the pitching side. So I think it's notable that they are throwing McGreevy out there for the first time against basically the best group of 4 hitters that you could probably come up with in the Cardinal lineup. Maybe Ivan Herrera is somebody that can crack that top 4 or 5. You can make arguments for Mason Wynn. You can even make argument for Jordan Walker to emerge and have a great season. But I think you're talking about 2 righties, Arenado Contreras, 2 lefties, Donovan and Nootbaar. That's about as lethal of a group as I think you could be forced to face as a young pitcher like McGreevy. And I'm not going to just take you through each and every at-bat. You can go and watch the video, as I mentioned, from earlier today that I posted on the channel as to exactly how all of these at-bats went. But there was a strikeout of Nootbaar swinging at one point, a really good battle with Contreras that's worth going back and looking, and tried to get as close to behind home plate as I could to give you guys a great camera angle. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I did see one person kind of making fun of, or basically saying they got motion sickness from my camera work. I'm a writer. I'm a talker. I'm not the best videographer, but it's what you got. So hopefully you just be glad for it. Hopefully the more I do it, the more reps I get, the better I get. I do have a selfie stick that I'm working on, just kind of fine tuning. But like I said, hopefully it's good enough to get you a glimpse into what's going on down here. But that video of Contreras, I think, is an interesting one because he fouled off several pitches before striking out looking. And you be the judge on some of these strike calls. At one point, I think I commented in the video and said the very tight strike zone here on the backfields. But then the one to Contreras, I thought, I don't know, that was maybe borderline. That was objectionable. But good stuff from McGreevy against him. Arenado had one poke to the right center gap-ish area. I don't think it ended up being a home run. Nobody really reacted as though it went over the wall. But a pretty good poke, and then you kind of lose it in the sun when you're paying attention to the video and the pitcher and everything else going on. So I didn't happen to see where the ball landed, but good swing by Arenado on one of those against McGreevy. I think it stayed in the yard, but I guess I couldn't say for sure. And then trying to think back at Donovan had a chopper. They had the screen behind McGreevy in case there was a line drive back up the gut, protecting the coaches and the folks that were there behind the screen. And McGreevy didn't really have a realistic chance to jump up and catch the chopper. You'll see in the video. But he did make an effort and then kind of had a little bit of frustration that he wasn't able to get it, because that's probably a seeing eye single that makes its way through the infield unless you've got a shift with somebody closer to the second base bag. So, just kind of a mixed bag of results, but certainly some good ones, and I would say more than held his own. And to me, that's all McGreevy's really going to have to do in Grapefruit League to be able to end up ready for the chance to kind of slide into the rotation if, and I'm going to say when, an injury allows for that to happen. So we'll see what ends up happening there with McGreevy, but wanted to kind of just let everybody know as the takeaway from Monday, look, they challenged him, and I think that's notable. You could have had any group of hitters go in there. Now, granted, when there was only one field of lives going on Monday, and it was the first full squad workout day, so a lot of position players out doing other things, it just felt it was notable to have that specific group challenged against the pitchers that those guys ended up facing, and McGreevy among them. So kind of interested in that. But then I wanted to make sure to note that after the workouts ended, man, 2 Cardinals. And it wasn't just these 2. Jose Fermin did some autograph signing. Mason Wynn, I saw reported by other reporters, was out there for quite a long while signing for fans. And that doesn't surprise me because I had video of Wynn doing the same thing last year and ended up talking to him a little bit, I think, and asking him about that, if I can recall correctly, for a story last spring. But it was, to my own eyes, I witnessed Brendan Donovan was out there for a good long while, and Wilson Contreras maybe even longer. Both these guys spent 15-plus minutes after batting practice, after workouts had ended. It was a kind of a late day anyway by the standards down here because guys coming in on the first full squad day had physicals to get through in the morning. They had the team meeting where Bill DeWitt Jr. speaks, probably Mo, some of the other guys involved, Ollie Marmol. Big team meeting. I think the Post-Dispatch had a nice photo from what that room looked like inside the clubhouse. Otherwise, a closed-door meeting. But just the kind of tone-setting meeting to start the spring. And that lasts like 45 minutes. It ends up being kind of a longer deal. And so guys get out to the fields a little bit later than what they would on a normal day. My point with this is it was a long day for these players. Willson Contreras had mentioned, during, and I was standing there in the dugout or right next to the dugout when Cardinals players get close enough to the kind of the chain link fence to where the fans might be able to try to get their attention. And what I would say to fans, definitely do try to wait till the guys are done with the workout, because they're not going to be able to, more often than not, do signings like right in the middle if they just are throwing a piece of trash away from their cup that they were drinking out of, or whatever the case might be. But there was a fan that had gotten Wilson's attention, and he said, guys, I promise I'll sign after. I'll do it after, but we still got some drills and some different things to do. And so, he had made that comment to a fan, and he held up his end of the bargain and then some. Signed in that little area where he had made that comment to a fan for probably 15 minutes. And then as he was walking off, I was just kind of there. I took a couple of videos, posted that to YouTube and a couple TikToks and stuff. I wanted to put that out there because I just think that's so cool. And Donovan was doing the same thing. Donovan had, and his family had come out too. And obviously you get done with a day of work, and Donovan probably wanted nothing more than to just be able to spend some time with his family. And ultimately, obviously, got to do that. But it was just really cool, I thought, that the time that he took and the time that Wilson took to sign for these fans and take pictures and just – and once you start, man, and there's a group of that many people and there might be only a couple of guys signing, it can probably be very difficult as a player to walk away at a certain point. You can't obviously stay all day. But the time that these guys gave, it never ceases to impress me, and I always want to highlight it because I just think it says a lot about their character, a lot about how they get it. They get how much that can make somebody's day. They get what that does to maybe a young fan in a memory that, for them, it's 15, 20 minutes out of a day. But then you also think about it, it's like, can you possibly do that every single time? That's minutes and hours and a long stretch of time that adds up over the course of a career when you're probably bombarded in every city. But it's just two dudes who absolutely get it. So, like I said off the jump, if you got kids and they say, oh, my favorite player is Brendan Donovan or my favorite player is Willson Contreras, I'll just tell you right now, your kids have picked some good favorite players because these are two dudes that you cannot go wrong with. And I think all Cardinals fans should be on board and rooting for these guys. Wilson changing positions and everything going on, he just handles it all like a champ, like a pro, like a true professional. And it's not just pumping his tires. The dude hits too. I mean, he's probably going into this season as the Cardinals' top hitter with the way that he performed last year. And statistically, the numbers back up that statement. So I just thought it was cool. I was taking some video. It's like I'd turn my back for a couple of minutes and then I'd go back over there and be like, man, Wilson is still signing. And so after he had kind of wrapped up, I was kind of walking alongside him. I just told him, I said, dude, that's really cool. He kind of gave me a fist bump. And then there's another kind of group of fans at a different part of the fence where Wilson notices, like, you know what, there's fans over there too. He goes over there for another 5 minutes plus to sign and take pictures with some of those fans. And then at one point, it had been a pretty lengthy amount of time. Nobody else was really out there anymore. So he eventually turns off to go back to the clubhouse. Thought it was cool that by then Ollie Marmol had come back out with his golf cart, and I had just said to Ollie, I said, this dude's been out here for 20 minutes. And Ollie goes, well, he's got nothing better to do, just kind of having fun with it. But in all sincerity, just thought that was really cool. And then Ollie did give him a ride back to the clubhouse. I, of course, had to walk, but that's the way it works. I'm not complaining. I'm perfectly good with that. And I just wanted to highlight that. I thought it was extremely cool. It's not the first time I've seen it from these guys, and it certainly won't be the last time. But I don't know if that's the kind of stuff people want to hear about on the podcast or not. But it's what I felt very compelled to talk about today, in addition to thinking that McGreevy was one of the more notable performers from camp today. I just wanted to share that with regards to Wilson and Brenden Donovan. Two good dudes and two leaders of this team. I mean, if this Cardinals team is going places in 2025, I would be surprised if it's not those two guys leading the charge from an offensive standpoint. So that's what I got for you today, Cardinals fans. Going to wrap it around 20 minutes this time because I've got lots more content to come for you. SportsHubSTL.com. You should check out the website of the new STL digital media site that is underway with YouTube channel and shows coming tomorrow, 10 a.m. Randy Carricker show featuring Brooke Grimsley. Like I said, around 10:20 I'll be on. 1 o'clock Central, we'll have Cards Hub 365 once again. Tomorrow should be Joe Rod, Claibs, and myself breaking things down, and we will. We'll answer your comments just like we do when I've put live streams on this channel. We'll do the same thing and try to get to as many of the comments as we can over there with the help from our producers back home. So it's been a lot of fun kind of getting that rolling. But what I wanted to mention is written content too. I've written a couple of articles, one on Arenado, one today on McGreevy. So make sure to check that out and support the new venture so that we can get off the ground running and be successful with that. But thank you guys so much for paying attention to all my content. If you want to support me on the next level, you can join the YouTube membership, as so many have done. And I want to be able to take some time in a moment to thank some of the people who are part of that YouTube membership. If you'll indulge me for just a moment, I'll be able to pull up and talk about at least a few of the folks, as it's right there at the top of our screen. Rena has been fantastic and supportive of everything that we're doing here. Trying to see how many members do we have right now. Very much a cool thing that we've got going on with the YouTube channel. Grand Slam Scotty, Ken, Debbie, Lucas, Dempsey, Almir, Tyler, Chris, KCD, just a few of our 30-some-odd members. Rena, appreciate you guys so much. And like I said, the video description has a link for the membership if you're interested in joining that. And the live streams will be coming too, and that's where the membership can be a lot of fun. Your comments will show up a little bit more dramatically with some flair and some badges. And if I get some time this year, I would want to know from the members what kind of badges you guys would like custom-wise, so I can maybe come up with some Cardinals-themed badges too. So just all kinds of stuff that I'm always open to suggestions to make the channel better and more inviting for our members. So thank you guys so much. I'm going to stop talking now. I'm going to try to get to bed. Appreciate you guys for all the support. We'll talk to you next time, which will be tomorrow. We're going every day down here in Jupiter on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.